The smell of death and leather had clung to Amelia Sterling since the morning her father taught her to scrape her first hide. And now, at 22 years old, she wondered if that smell would follow her straight into an unmarked grave. She stood knee-deep in the tanning pit behind her father's shop on the edge of Cimarron, New Mexico territory. Her hands raw and stained brown from the mixture of oak bark and animal brains, she worked into a stretched cowhide, watching the respectable women of town cross to the opposite side of the dusty street rather than walk past her family's property. The year was 1878, and the town had grown prosperous enough that folks could afford to be particular about their company. The railroad had brought civilization, churches, and social hierarchies that had no place for a young woman who spent her days elbow-deep in the skinned remains of cattle. Amelia's father, Thomas Sterling, had been the town tanner for 15 years, arriving when Cimarron was nothing but a handful of buildings and desperate men looking for silver in the surrounding mountains. Back then, nobody cared about the smell or the trade. Everyone needed leather for saddles, boots, holsters, and harnesses. But now that the town had grown, now that there were tea parties and Sunday socials, the tanner and his daughter had become something to be tolerated at a distance, necessary but undesirable. Amelia had stopped attending church 2 years ago after the minister's wife had loudly declared that no decent Christian woman would handle dead things for a living, that it was unwomanly and brought shame upon the whole community. Her father had urged her to ignore the gossip, to hold her head high, but Amelia had felt the weight of every stare, every whispered comment, every mother pulling her daughter away when Amelia approached. So she stayed home on Sundays now, working the hides, mixing the tanning solutions, stretching and scraping and dyeing the leather that those same judgmental families would purchase through her father, never acknowledging that her hands had crafted the very boots they wore. The sun beat down mercilessly that August afternoon, and sweat trickled down Amelia's spine beneath her work dress, already stained beyond redemption. Her dark hair was tied back in a practical bun, and her face bore the sun-weathered complexion of someone who worked outdoors regardless of propriety. She had her mother's fine features, or so her father often said, though Amelia barely remembered the woman who had died of fever when she was only 6 years old. Sometimes she wondered if her mother would have been ashamed of what she had become, or if she would have understood that survival required sacrifice. The sound of hoofbeats drew her attention, and she looked up to see a lone rider approaching along the main road. He sat tall in the saddle, his hat pulled low against the sun, leading a pack horse behind him. As he drew closer, Amelia could make out more details: broad shoulders, dusty trail clothes, and the easy posture of a man who spent more time on horseback than on foot. He slowed as he neared the tanning shop, and for a moment Amelia thought he might ride past like everyone else. Instead, he dismounted and tied his horse to the post out front. Amelia wiped her hands on her apron, though it did little good, and walked around to the front of the shop. Her father was inside, working on a saddle repair, and she heard him call out a greeting. "Help you with something?" Thomas Sterling's voice carried through the open door. "Looking to get some work done," the stranger replied. His voice was deep and measured, with a slight drawl that suggested Texas origins. "Got some tack that needs mending, and I need a new pair of work gloves. Heard in town this was the place." "You heard right. Come on in." Amelia hesitated at the corner of the building, not wanting to intrude but curious about the stranger. Visitors who actually wanted to do business directly with them were rare enough to be noteworthy. Most people sent servants or ranch hands to deal with the tanner, keeping their own hands clean of the association. "My daughter handles most of the leather goods these days," she heard her father say. "Amelia, you out back." She took a breath and stepped through the door, immediately aware of how she must look, covered in stains and smelling of the tanning pit. The stranger turned to face her, and she found herself looking into a pair of steady gray eyes that didn't flinch or judge, just assessed her with the same practical consideration he might give a horse or a piece of equipment. "Miss Sterling," he said, touching the brim of his hat. "Name's Lucas Jensen. I need some gloves that will hold up to ranch work, and I have a saddle cinch that is about to give out." "I can help with both," Amelia said, lifting her chin slightly. She had learned not to apologize for her appearance or her trade. "The cinch I can fix today if it is not too far gone. The gloves will take 3 days. 3 days is fine. I am staying at the boarding house while I look for work in the area." "You are a ranch hand?" her father asked. "Yes, sir. Been working cattle since I was 14. Just came up from Texas, looking for a change of scenery. Heard there was good ranch land around here." "The Maxwell Land Grant has several operations," Thomas said. "They are always looking for experienced hands. You might try the Aztec Mine Ranch about 10 miles north." Lucas nodded. "Appreciate the tip." He turned back to Amelia. "Should I leave the cinch in my old gloves so you can get the sizing right?" "That would help," Amelia said. She watched as he unbuckled the cinch from his saddle, his movements efficient and practiced. When he handed it to her, their fingers brushed briefly, and she noticed his hands were as work-worn as her own, calloused and scarred from years of hard labor. Something about that small observation made her feel less self-conscious. "The leather's worn through here," she said, examining the cinch. "I will need to replace this section entirely. It will be stronger than the original when I am done." "I trust your judgment," Lucas said simply. "What do I owe you for the work?" Thomas named a fair price, and Lucas paid half up front without haggling, which immediately set him apart from half the customers they dealt with. Most people seemed to think they could negotiate down the price because of the tanner's low social standing, as if their disdain somehow entitled them to a discount. "I will have the cinch ready by evening," Amelia said. "The gloves will be ready in 3 days, like I said. Much obliged." Lucas settled his hat back on his head. "I will come by around sunset for the cinch." He paused, his gray eyes meeting hers again. "Your father mentioned you do most of the leather work. You do good work." The question was direct but not unkind, and Amelia appreciated the straightforwardness. "The best in the territory," she said without false modesty. "My father taught me everything he knows, and I have been working leather since I was 10 years old. If my work does not hold up, I will replace it for free." A slight smile touched Lucas's lips. "That is a fair guarantee." He nodded to both of them. "I will see you this evening, then." After he left, Thomas chuckled. "Confident, are you not?" "It is the truth," Amelia said, already examining the cinch more closely. "I am good at what I do, even if the rest of this town wishes I was not." Her father's expression softened. "Do not let them make you bitter, Amelia. You have nothing to be ashamed of." "I am not ashamed," she said quietly, "but that does not mean their words do not sting." She spent the afternoon working on the cinch, carefully cutting away the damaged leather and replacing it with a strong new piece she had finished tanning the previous week. The work was meditative, requiring enough concentration that she could forget about judgmental church ladies and the loneliness that had become her constant companion. She had learned to find satisfaction in the work itself, in the knowledge that what she created would last, would serve a purpose, would be valued even if she herself was not. As the sun began its descent toward the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Amelia heard footsteps approaching the shop. Lucas Jensen appeared in the doorway, his hat in his hands this time, his hair slightly damp as if he had washed up at the boarding house. "Right on time," Amelia said, holding up the repaired cinch. "I replaced the entire section and reinforced the stitching. It should outlast the rest of your saddle now." Lucas examined the work carefully, running his fingers over the stitching, testing the strength of the repair. "This is fine work," he said, and there was genuine appreciation in his voice. "Real fine work." "Thank you," Amelia said, surprised by how much his approval pleased her. She was used to her work being accepted with grudging necessity, not open admiration. "You mind if I ask you something?" Lucas said, meeting her eyes. Amelia tensed slightly, expecting the usual questions about why a woman was doing this work, whether she planned to marry and give it up, all the intrusive inquiries she had fielded over the years. "Ask. How did you learn to make the stitches so even?" "I have been around leather workers my whole life, and I have rarely seen such consistent work." The question caught her off guard, and she found herself answering honestly. "Practice, mostly. But also, my father taught me to feel the rhythm of it, to let the needle and thread move in a pattern like a heartbeat. Once you find that rhythm, your hands just know." Lucas nodded thoughtfully. "Like breaking a horse. There is a rhythm to it, a way of moving with the animal instead of against it." "Exactly like that," Amelia said, surprised by the comparison. She had never thought of it that way, but he was right. "Well, Miss Sterling, I will be back in 3 days for those gloves. And I want to thank you for taking the time to do this right. In my experience, honest work is hard to find, and it deserves to be recognized." "Honest work," Amelia repeated softly. The phrase resonated somewhere deep in her chest. How long had it been since anyone had called her work honest, rather than shameful or necessary evil? "That is what it is it not?" Lucas said. "You take something raw and make it useful. That is honest as it gets." After he left, Amelia stood in the doorway of the shop, watching him ride away toward town. The word stayed with her, honest work. That night, as she lay in her narrow bed in the room above the shop, she thought about the way Lucas had examined her stitching with genuine interest. The way he had spoken to her like she was a craftsperson worthy of respect rather than something to be avoided. The next 3 days passed with their usual rhythm. Amelia worked the hides, scraped and stretched and stitched, while her father handled the business side of things and the heavier physical labor. She crafted Lucas's gloves with particular care, selecting the softest but strongest leather she had, cutting each piece to exact specifications based on the worn gloves he had left for sizing. She double-stitched the stress points and added reinforcement along the palms where ranch work would wear hardest. On the 3rd day, Lucas returned in the late afternoon. This time he was riding a different horse, a well-built chestnut mare, and he was dressed in slightly cleaner clothes, though still work-worn and practical. "Got hired at the Aztec Mine Ranch," he announced as he dismounted. "Start tomorrow. Your father's recommendation helped." "That is good news," Amelia said, and meant it. There was something about this quiet cowboy that she found herself drawn to, a steadiness that was rare in her experience. "Brought your gloves." She handed them to him, and he examined them with the same careful attention he had given the cinch. "These are beautiful," he said finally, flexing his fingers in the gloves, testing the fit. "Better than anything I could buy in a store." "They will mold to your hands after a few days of wear," Amelia explained. "The leather will soften where you need it but stay strong where the work demands it." Lucas pulled off the gloves and held them carefully, as if they were something precious rather than simple work tools. "What do I owe you?" She named the price her father had calculated, and Lucas paid without hesitation. But he did not leave immediately. Instead, he stood there, turning the gloves over in his hands, seeming to wrestle with something. "Miss Sterling," he said finally, "I hope you will not think me too forward, but would you consider letting me take you to dinner at the hotel? I know you do not know me well, but I would like to remedy that if you are willing." Amelia stared at him, certain she had misheard. "You want to take me to dinner, at the hotel?" "Yes, madam. I know it is sudden, but I am not much for playing games or being coy about things. I admire your work, and from what I have seen, I admire you. I would like to get to know you better if you are amenable." "I smell like tanning solution," Amelia said bluntly. "People cross the street to avoid walking past this shop. The hotel dining room is where all the respectable families eat." "Are you sure you want to be seen with the tanner's daughter?" Lucas's expression hardened slightly, not with anger at her but at the situation she described. "I want to be seen with a skilled craftswoman who does honest work and does not apologize for it. If other people have a problem with that, it is their problem, not mine." Amelia felt something crack open in her chest, some protective shell she had built around her heart. "When?" "Saturday evening, if that suits you. I get my first half-day off then." "Saturday evening," Amelia agreed, her voice barely above a whisper. Lucas's stern expression softened into a genuine smile, transforming his face. "I will pick you up at 6, if that is all right with your father." "I am 22 years old, Mr. Jensen. I do not need my father's permission." "But I appreciate the courtesy." "Lucas," he said, "please call me Lucas. Then you should call me Amelia." "Amelia," he repeated, and she liked the way her name sounded in his deep voice. "I will see you Saturday at 6. After he left, Amelia's father emerged from the back room where he had been conspicuously working during the entire exchange. "Did I hear that right? Did that young man just ask you to dinner?" "He did," Amelia said, still slightly dazed. "And you said yes?" "I did." Thomas Sterling broke into a wide grin, the first genuinely happy expression Amelia had seen on his face in months. "Good. That is good, Amelia. You deserve some happiness, some company. You have been alone too long." "Do not get ahead of yourself," Amelia warned. "It is just dinner. He is probably just being kind because he is new in town and does not know any better." But even as she said it, she did not quite believe it. There had been something in Lucas's eyes, something sincere and determined that suggested he knew exactly what he was doing. Saturday arrived both too quickly and not quickly enough. Amelia spent the morning in an agony of anticipation and dread, working the hides as usual but accomplishing less than normal because her mind kept wandering. She owned exactly one dress that was not stained beyond repair, a simple blue cotton dress she wore on the rare occasions she went into town for supplies. She had not worn it in months. That afternoon, she heated water and took a proper bath, scrubbing her skin until it was pink, trying to wash away the permanent stain of her trade. She washed her hair 3 times, using the lavender soap she had been saving, and then carefully dried and brushed it until it shone. When she finally put on the blue dress, she barely recognized herself in the small mirror above her washstand. Her father was waiting downstairs when she descended, and his eyes misted slightly when he saw her. "You look just like your mother," he said gruffly. "She would be so proud of you, Amelia. Proud of your strength and your skill and your good heart." "I am terrified," Amelia admitted. "What if people say things? What if they make a scene? Then Lucas will see what you have been dealing with all these years, and if he is the man I think he is, it will only make him more determined. And if he cannot handle it, then he is not worthy of you anyway." At precisely 6 o'clock, Lucas arrived on his mare, but this time he was clean-shaven and wearing what were clearly his best clothes: dark trousers, a white shirt, and a vest that had seen better days but was neatly pressed. He dismounted and tied his horse, then knocked on the door of the shop rather than just walking in. Thomas opened the door. "Evening, Lucas. Come in." Lucas stepped inside and saw Amelia, and his expression was worth every moment of anxiety she had suffered. His eyes widened slightly and he removed his hat, holding it against his chest. "Miss Sterling," he said, "you look beautiful." "Thank you," Amelia said, feeling heat rise in her cheeks. "You look very nice as well." The walk to the hotel was only about a quarter-mile, and Lucas offered his arm, which Amelia took after a moment's hesitation. She could not remember the last time she had walked through town like this, arm in arm with someone, like a normal young woman. As they walked, she was acutely aware of the stares they attracted, the heads turning, the whispers starting. "They are talking," she murmured. "Let them talk," Lucas said calmly. "I have been talked about before. It never killed me." The hotel dining room was busy, filled with families and couples enjoying their Saturday dinners. The room felt noticeably quieter when Lucas and Amelia entered, and she felt every eye turn toward them. The hostess, Mrs. Patterson, looked like she had swallowed something sour. "We would like a table for two," Lucas said pleasantly, as if he noticed nothing amiss. "I am not sure we have anything available," Mrs. Patterson said, though there were clearly several empty tables. "That table by the window looks available," Lucas said, his voice still pleasant but taking on a harder edge. "We will take that one." Mrs. Patterson's mouth pinched, but she could not refuse without making a scene, so she led them to the table with obvious reluctance. As they walked through the dining room, Amelia heard the whispers grow louder. "Can you believe the nerve? The tanner's daughter in here. Probably still smells of death." Amelia's step faltered, but Lucas's hand covered hers on his arm, steadying her. "Head up," he murmured. "You have nothing to be ashamed of." They sat down, and Lucas ordered for both of them, choosing the roast beef dinner and coffee. After Mrs. Patterson left, he leaned forward slightly. "How long have you been dealing with this?" "Years," Amelia admitted. "Since I was old enough to work the hides alongside my father. It got worse after my mother died and I had to take over more of the trade. Women especially seem to think I am an affront to decency." "Because you work hard and provide a necessary service." Lucas's tone was incredulous. "That is the most backwards thinking I have ever heard." "You do not understand how things work here," Amelia said quietly. "There are rules, expectations. Women are supposed to be delicate, to stay clean, to occupy themselves with needlework and social calls. What I do is considered masculine, dirty, beneath me. The fact that I am good at it makes it worse somehow." "Where I come from," Lucas said, "everyone works. My mother ran our ranch after my father died when I was 12. She could rope and brand and birth a calf as well as any man. Nobody thought less of her for it. They respected her because she did what needed doing." "Where was that?" Amelia asked, grateful for the change of subject. "Small ranch outside of Austin. We had about 200 head of cattle, and my mother ran that operation for 8 years before she remarried. She taught me that honest work is honest work, that it does not matter if you are cleaning a stall or serving tea, as long as you do it well and with integrity. What you do, Amelia, that is honest work. You take something that would otherwise rot and waste and turn it into something useful, something that lasts. There is honor in that." Amelia felt tears prick her eyes. "You do not know how much I needed to hear that." Their food arrived, brought by a young waitress who looked sympathetic at least. As they ate, they talked more easily. Lucas told her about growing up on the ranch, about the hard years after his father died, about learning to break horses and work cattle. He spoke about his decision to leave Texas, seeking new opportunities in New Mexico territory, wanting to see more of the West before he settled down. "What about you?" he asked. "Have you always lived here, always?" Amelia confirmed. "My father brought us here when I was 7. My mother died a year later, and it was just the two of us after that. He needed help with the business, and I was all he had. At first, people thought it was temporary, that he would hire someone or remarry. But he never did, and I just kept learning more until I was doing most of the actual leather work." "You enjoy it?" Lucas asked. "The work itself, I mean, setting aside everything else." Amelia considered the question seriously. "I do," she admitted. "I love the process of it, taking something raw and transforming it. I love that I can see the direct result of my labor, that I can hold something in my hands and know I created it, that it will serve someone well. I love that my work matters, even if people do not want to acknowledge it." "It shows," Lucas said, "in the quality of what you make. That kind of care cannot be faked." They were halfway through dinner when the minister's wife, Mrs. Dorothy Winters, approached their table. She was a formidable woman in her 50s, dressed in severe black despite the summer heat, her face set in lines of permanent disapproval. "Mr. Jensen," she said, ignoring Amelia entirely. "I do not believe we have been introduced. I am Mrs. Winters, and my husband is the minister of the First Presbyterian Church. I wanted to welcome you to Cimarron." "Thank you, madam," Lucas said politely but without warmth. "I feel it is my Christian duty to inform you, as a newcomer, about the character of those you associate with. You may not be aware of the reputation of certain individuals." "Mrs. Winters," Lucas interrupted, his voice cold now. "I am aware that Miss Sterling is a skilled leather worker who runs an honest business with her father. I am aware that she works harder than most people I have met. And I am aware that she has been treated poorly by people who should know better. If that is the reputation you are referring to, then yes, I am aware." Mrs. Winters's face flushed. "Well, I was trying to help you avoid a social mistake." "The only social mistake I see happening right now is your rudeness in interrupting our dinner," Lucas said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Good evening, Mrs. Winters." The older woman sputtered but retreated, and a ripple of shocked whispers spread through the dining room. Amelia sat frozen, mortified and amazed in equal measure. "I am sorry," Lucas said, turning back to her, "but I will not sit here and let someone insult you to your face." "You are going to make enemies," Amelia warned. "The Winters family is powerful in this town." "I do not care," Lucas said simply. "I meant what I said. Honest work deserves honest respect, and honest love for that matter." Amelia's breath caught. "Love?" Lucas had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "I am getting ahead of myself, but I am not a man who plays games, Amelia. I am attracted to you. I admire you, and I would like to see where this might go if you are willing. But I need you to know up front that I do not care what these people think. I care about what I think and what you think, and that is all." "I do not know what to say," Amelia whispered. "Say you will let me court you properly," Lucas said. "Say you will give me a chance to prove that there is at least one person in this town who sees your worth." "I will," Amelia said, her heart pounding. "Yes, I will." They finished their dinner in a bubble of intimacy despite the hostile atmosphere around them. When Lucas walked her home afterward, the night air was cool and clear, full of stars. At the door of the shop, he took her hand. "Thank you for tonight," he said, "for trusting me enough to come." "Thank you for standing up for me," Amelia replied. "No one has ever done that before." "They should have," Lucas said firmly, "and I will do it again as many times as necessary." He squeezed her hand gently. "I work long days at the ranch, but I get Sunday afternoons off. May I call on you tomorrow? I would like that very much." Lucas left, and Amelia went inside to find her father waiting up, eager for details. She told him everything, and Thomas nodded with satisfaction. "That boy has backbone," he said, "and sense. About time someone around here showed some. That night, Amelia lay awake for hours, replaying every moment of the evening. She thought about Lucas's words about honest work deserving honest love. She thought about the way he had defended her without hesitation, the way he had looked at her like she was something precious. And for the first time in years, she let herself hope that maybe, just maybe, she could have something more than just her work. Lucas became a regular presence in her life after that. True to his word, he came by every Sunday afternoon, and they would sit in the shade behind the shop, talking for hours. He told her about the ranch, about the wild horses they were breaking, about the vast stretches of land that seemed to go on forever. She told him about her craft, about the different tanning methods, about her dreams of maybe one day expanding the business, taking on apprentices, building something that would last. The town gossip reached a fever pitch. Respectable women clutched their pearls and predicted that no good would come of it. Men at the saloon took bets on how long it would last before Lucas came to his senses. But Lucas ignored all of it with a serenity that Amelia found both admirable and slightly baffling. "Does it really not bother you?" she asked him one Sunday afternoon in early September, about a month after they had started courting. "The things people say, I have been thinking about that," Lucas said slowly, "about why it does not bother me. And I think it is because I know who I am and what I value. I was raised to believe that character matters more than reputation, that what you do when no one is watching defines you more than what you do when everyone is. These people, they value appearances and social standing. But at the end of the day, none of that matters. What matters is whether you are honest, whether you work hard, whether you treat people with respect. You have all of that, Amelia. They do not. You make it sound so simple. It is simple. Not easy, but simple. I choose you, and I choose to believe that what we have is worth more than their approval." As September turned to October, their relationship deepened. Lucas taught Amelia to ride better, taking her out on his mare on Sunday afternoons to explore the countryside around Cimarron. She showed him the intricacies of leather working, and he proved to have a natural talent for it, his hands already trained by years of working with rope and tack. The first time Lucas kissed her, it was late October, and they were sitting on a blanket by the Cimarron River, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and crimson. He had been telling her about a difficult horse he was working with, and she had been laughing at his descriptions, and then suddenly he was looking at her with such intensity that her laughter died. "Amelia," he said softly, "I am going to kiss you now, if that is all right." She nodded, unable to speak, and then his lips were on hers, gentle but sure, and she felt like she was falling and flying at the same time. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Lucas rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said. "I know it is fast, but I do not see the point in pretending otherwise. I love you, Amelia Sterling." "I love you too," she whispered, and knew it was true. Somehow, in just a few months, this quiet cowboy had become essential to her, had shown her what it felt like to be valued, to be chosen. As winter approached, Lucas began talking about the future. He had been saving his wages, and he had his eye on a small parcel of land about 5 miles outside of town, good grazing land with water access. He wanted to start his own ranch, build something of his own. "I want you to be part of it," he told her one cold November evening. They were in the shop where she was teaching him to make a bridle. "Not just as my wife, but as a partner. I thought we could combine our skills, raise cattle and horses, and also run a leather working operation. We could supply our own ranch and sell to others. Build something together." "As your wife," Amelia repeated, her heart racing. Lucas set down the leather he had been working on and turned to face her fully. "I am not doing this right. I wanted to wait until I had bought the land, until I had something concrete to offer you. but I cannot wait any more." He dropped to one knee right there in the middle of the workshop, taking her stained hands in his. "Amelia Sterling, will you marry me? Will you build a life with me, work beside me, be my partner in everything?" "Yes," Amelia said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, absolutely yes." Lucas stood and pulled her into his arms, kissing her deeply. When they finally told her father, Thomas cried openly, embracing them both. "You take care of my girl," he told Lucas gruffly. "With my life," Lucas promised. They were married in the shop on a cold December morning, with just Amelia's father and a few of Lucas's friends from the ranch present. The minister refused to perform the ceremony, so they found a justice of the peace from a neighboring town who did not care about the bride's occupation. Amelia wore her mother's wedding dress, carefully preserved, and Lucas wore his best suit. It was simple and perfect. The town was scandalized, of course. The idea that the tanner's daughter had actually married a respectable ranch hand was almost too much for the gossips to bear. But by that point, neither Amelia nor Lucas cared. They had each other, and they had their plans. Lucas bought the land in January of 1879, and they spent the winter months planning their ranch. Thomas Sterling, energized by his daughter's happiness, worked harder than he had in years, building up inventory so they would have a good foundation to start their business. Lucas worked extra hours at the Aztec mine ranch, saving every penny he could. In the spring, they began building. Lucas and some of his friends from the ranch erected a small house, just for rooms, but it was theirs. They built a barn and corrals for horses and cattle. And they built a large workshop for the leather working operation. This one better ventilated and more efficiently laid out than the old one in town. Amelia moved to the ranch in April, and Thomas Sterling, suddenly alone after 15 years of his daughter's constant presence, made a surprising decision. He sold the shop in town and moved out to the ranch with them, adding a small addition to the house for himself. The three of them worked together, building the business from the ground up. The first year was brutally hard. They had 20 head of cattle, 3 horses, and more work than 3 people could reasonably handle. Amelia would spend her days tanning hides, stitching saddles, and crafting bridles, then help Lucas with the evening chores, feeding animals and mending fences. She fell into bed exhausted every night, her hands cramping, her back aching, but she had never been happier. Lucas proved to be exactly the partner he had promised to be. He never expected her to give up her craft or to confine herself to traditional women's work. Instead, he valued her skills, consulted her on decisions, and split the labor according to their strengths rather than arbitrary gender roles. When she needed to spend a full day finishing a large commission, he handled the cooking without complaint. When he needed help breaking a particularly difficult horse, she was right there beside him. They were not without challenges. Money was tight that first year, and there were moments when they wondered if they had taken on too much. A hard summer drought killed some of their cattle. A bout of illness laid Lucas low for 2 weeks, leaving Amelia and her father to handle everything. But they persevered, supporting each other through every setback. By the fall of 1879, things began to stabilize. Word had spread about the quality of their leather goods, and they began getting orders from ranches and individuals across the territory. The cattle they had not lost to drought had thrived, and they were able to buy more. Lucas proved to have a gift for horse training, and his reputation grew. It was in October, almost exactly a year after Lucas had first kissed her, that Amelia realized she was pregnant. She felt a mixture of joy and terror. They had talked about children, of course, but she had assumed it would be further in the future, when the ranch was more established. When she told Lucas, he picked her up and spun her around, whooping with joy. "We are going to be parents," he kept saying, wonder in his voice. "Amelia, we are going to have a baby. Are you not worried?" she asked. "About the timing, about the work, we will figure it out," Lucas said confidently. "The same way we have figured out everything else, together." True to his word, Lucas adjusted as Amelia's pregnancy progressed. He took on more of the physical labor, hired a young man from town to help with the ranch work, and insisted that Amelia rest more than she wanted to. Her father hovered protectively, and despite her protests that she was perfectly capable of continuing to work, both men ganged up on her, limiting her to the lighter tasks. The baby came in May of 1880, a healthy boy they named Thomas Lucas Jensen, honoring both grandfathers. The birth was hard, attended by a midwife from town who had been willing to come out to the ranch despite the whispers about Amelia. For a few terrifying hours, Lucas paced outside while Amelia labored, praying harder than he ever had in his life. But when it was over and he held his son for the first time, tears streaming down his weathered face, he felt like the richest man alive. Amelia, exhausted but radiant, watched him with the baby and knew she had made the right choice in everything. The ranch continued to grow. Lucas proved to be as good a father as he was a husband, sharing the nighttime feedings and diaper changes, carrying the baby in a sling while he worked, so Amelia could rest and recover. Thomas Sterling, now a grandfather, seemed to shed years, his energy renewed by the presence of the next generation. As little Tom grew, the ranch prospered. They bought more land, expanded their herds, and built a larger workshop. Amelia trained 2 apprentices, young people from town who wanted to learn the trade and did not care about the social stigma. The leather goods bearing the Jensen Ranch mark became known throughout New Mexico Territory for their quality. The town of Cimarron slowly, grudgingly, began to change its attitude. It was hard to maintain disdain for people who were successful, who paid their bills on time, who contributed to the local economy. Some of the old guard, like Mrs. Winters, never softened, but younger families, newcomers to the area, judged Lucas and Amelia on their merits rather than their origins. By 1882, they had established themselves as one of the more successful small ranches in the area. Lucas bought out a failing neighbor and doubled their land. They hired 3 full-time ranch hands and had a waiting list of people wanting to apprentice in the leather shop. It was in the spring of that year that Amelia discovered she was pregnant again. This time, she felt more confident, more prepared. The birth of their daughter Emma in December of 1882 was easier, and Lucas was just as besotted with his little girl as he had been with his son. Life settled into a rhythm. The children grew, learning to ride almost as soon as they could walk. Young Tom showed an interest in the horses, while Emma, to everyone's amusement, was fascinated by the leather working process. Amelia would find her toddler daughter in the workshop, carefully watching as hides were scraped and treated. "She has your eye for detail," Lucas observed one afternoon, watching Emma examine a finished saddle with serious concentration. "God help her if she wants to follow in my footsteps," Amelia said, but there was pride in her voice. "Though I suppose things are different now." "They are different because we made them different," Lucas said, "because you refuse to be ashamed of honest work." In 1884, Thomas Sterling suffered a heart attack. It was sudden, mercifully quick, and he died as he had lived, with dignity and surrounded by family. They buried him on a hill overlooking the ranch, and Amelia grieved deeply for the father who had taught her so much, who had never made her feel less than for being a woman in a man's trade. After her father's death, Amelia threw herself into the work with renewed purpose. She expanded the leather shop further, taking on more apprentices, writing detailed instructions for various techniques. She wanted to preserve her father's legacy, to ensure that the knowledge he had passed to her would continue. Lucas supported her through the grief, taking on more of the childcare, running interference when she needed time alone. Their marriage, tested by loss and hardship, only grew stronger. The children continued to grow. Tom, at 5, was already helping his father with the horses, showing a natural talent for the work. Emma, at 3, had learned to identify different types of leather by touch, could name the tanning solutions by smell, and followed her mother everywhere. By 1886, the ranch had grown beyond anything they had imagined that cold winter day when they had first started planning. They had over 500 head of cattle, a dozen horses, and a leather working operation that supplied ranches across 3 territories. They employed 15 people full-time and had built a small community around the ranch. Lucas, now 30 years old, had weathered into the classic image of a Western rancher, his face lined by sun and wind, his hands permanently calloused. But when he looked at Amelia, his eyes still held the same warmth they had that first day in the tanning shop. Amelia, at 30, had grown into her role as both craftswoman and ranch owner. She moved between the workshop and the house with easy confidence, equally comfortable negotiating a business deal as she was soothing a scraped knee. The stains on her hands had never quite faded, but she wore them with pride now. One evening in the summer of 1886, they sat on the porch of their house, watching the sunset paint the mountains purple and gold. The children were in bed, the ranch was quiet, and for a moment they could just be. "You remember what you said to me that first night?" Amelia asked. "At the hotel." "I said a lot of things that night," Lucas replied, taking her hand. "You said honest work deserves honest love," Amelia said softly. "I had never heard anything so beautiful in my life. I had spent so long being told that what I did was shameful, that I was less than, that I would never be worthy of love because of my trade. And you looked at me and saw value where everyone else saw only shame." "I saw the truth," Lucas said simply. "I saw a woman who worked hard, who took pride in her craft, who had been beaten down by narrow-minded fools but had never given up. How could I not love that?" "You changed my life," Amelia said. "You gave me back my dignity." "You always had dignity," Lucas corrected. "I just recognized it." "You did the hard part, Amelia. You kept going when it would have been easier to give up, to be bitter, to let them win. You chose to keep being yourself, to keep doing your work with pride. That is what I fell in love with." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, hand in hand, watching the stars emerge. Somewhere in the barn, a horse whinnied softly. From inside the house came the sound of Tom talking in his sleep and Emma's answering giggle. "I want to expand the apprentice program," Amelia said suddenly. "Not just leather working. I want to teach other trades too, bring in masters from different crafts. I want to create a place where young people can learn useful skills without shame, where work is valued for what it is rather than some arbitrary social hierarchy." Lucas squeezed her hand. "That is a wonderful idea. We have the space and we have the reputation now. People will send their children to learn from us." "The town might not like it," Amelia warned. "We will be taking in all sorts, probably including people they look down on. When have we ever cared what the town thinks?" Lucas said with a smile, "We will do it right and eventually they will come around, or they will not, and it will not matter either way." So they did it. In the fall of 1886, they opened the Jensen Ranch Trade School, a formal program that taught leather working, blacksmithing, carpentry, and animal husbandry. They brought in skilled craftspeople to teach, built dormitories for students who came from far away, and charged fees on a sliding scale so that lack of money would not be a barrier. The first class had 12 students, ranging in age from 14 to 25. Some were wealthy ranchers' children looking to learn practical skills. Others were orphans or children from poor families, seeing an opportunity to build a better life. Amelia and Lucas treated them all the same, judging them only on their willingness to work hard and learn. Emma, now 4 years old, appointed herself an unofficial greeter, showing new students around with grave importance. Tom, at 6, helped in the stables, teaching the students about horses with the unconscious expertise of a child who had grown up around them. The program was an immediate success. Word spread about the quality of the instruction and the egalitarian atmosphere. By the second year, they had to turn students away, and by the third year, they were expanding again, adding more instructors and more trades. The town of Cimarron, which had once shunned the tanner's daughter, now pointed to the Jensen ranch with pride as an example of local success. Mrs. Winters still crossed to the other side of the street when she saw Amelia in town, but younger families sought her out, asking advice, requesting apprenticeships for their children. The years continued to pass, each one building on the last. In 1888, Amelia gave birth to their third child, another boy they named James. In 1890, their fourth child arrived, a daughter they called Sarah. The house expanded to accommodate the growing family, and life took on the beautiful chaos of a house full of children and purpose. Tom grew into a skilled horseman, with his father's patience and his mother's attention to detail. At 12, he was already helping break horses and talking about expanding their breeding operation. Emma, at 10, was running the leather shop with the confidence of someone twice her age, creating pieces that rivaled her mother's work. The younger children showed their own interests, James gravitating toward the cattle operation and Sarah, at just 2 years old, already displaying a stubborn independence that reminded everyone of her mother. Lucas, now in his mid-30s, had achieved everything he had hoped for when he first rode into Cimarron all those years ago. He had his own land, his own operation, a family he adored, and a partner who challenged and supported him in equal measure. Sometimes he would stand on the porch in the early morning, coffee in hand, surveying the ranch and feel overwhelmed by gratitude. Amelia, at 34, had transformed from the isolated young woman working in her father's shop to a respected businesswoman, mother, and educator. She had proven that honest work done with pride could overcome prejudice, that character mattered more than circumstance. The stains on her hands remained, but now they were joined by ink stains from keeping the books, flour from baking bread, and dirt from working in the garden with her children. The trade school continued to grow and evolve. Alumni began to spread across the West, opening their own shops and ranches, carrying forward the lessons they had learned about skill and dignity and honest work. Some returned as instructors, wanting to give back what they had been given. In the spring of 1893, the territorial governor visited Cimarron and specifically requested a tour of the Jensen Ranch, having heard about their innovative approach to education and their successful integration of multiple businesses. Lucas and Amelia hosted him graciously, and he left singing their praises, calling them an example of what the territory needed more of. That night, after the governor had left and the excitement had died down, Lucas and Amelia found themselves back on the porch, their favorite spot for quiet conversations. 15 years, Lucas said. 15 years since I walked into your father's shop looking for a cinch repair. The best broken cinch in history, Amelia said with a smile. You ever think about how different things could have been? Lucas asked. If I had gone to a different shop, if you had said no to dinner, if we had let the gossip win. Sometimes, Amelia admitted. But mostly I just feel grateful that you saw me, really saw me when everyone else was looking away. You were impossible to miss, Lucas said. This fierce, talented woman, doing work she loved despite everyone telling her she should not. How could I not fall in love with that? They were interrupted by the sound of crying from inside the house. Sarah had woken from a nightmare, and Amelia went to comfort her while Lucas checked on the other children. When they finally made it to their own bed, exhausted but content, Lucas pulled Amelia close. "I love you," he murmured into her hair. "I love the life we have built together. I love watching you teach our daughter the same skills you learned from your father. I love that we have created a place where honest work is honored, where people can learn and grow without shame." "I love you too," Amelia said. "Thank you for being brave enough to see past what everyone else thought, for choosing me when it would have been easier to choose someone else." "It was never a choice," Lucas said. "From the moment I saw the way you stitched that cinch, the pride you took in your work, I was done for. You were always the only choice." The years continued their steady march. Tom, at 17, took over most of the horse training operation, proving to be even more talented than his father. He had inherited his mother's precision and his father's patience, and horses responded to him like he spoke their language. Emma, at 15, was not only running the leather shop but innovating, developing new techniques and designs that were starting to attract attention from as far away as California. James, at 10, had decided he wanted to be a veterinarian, spending all his free time learning about animal health and treatment. Sarah, at 6, remained gloriously undecided, trying everything with enthusiastic determination. In 1896, Amelia discovered she was pregnant again at 38, a surprise that delighted and terrified her in equal measure. This pregnancy was harder than the others, and Lucas hovered protectively, finally understanding the fear she had felt during her first pregnancy. But in the spring of 1897, their fifth child arrived safely, a healthy boy they named Samuel. The arrival of Samuel seemed to complete their family in some fundamental way. The older children doted on their baby brother, and the house rang with laughter and the organized chaos of a large, happy family. The ranch continued to prosper. They now owned over 3,000 acres, ran more than 1,000 head of cattle, and had one of the most respected horse breeding operations in the Southwest. The trade school had expanded to include 15 different trades and educated over 100 students a year. Lucas and Amelia had become, almost despite themselves, pillars of the community. When the Reverend Winters died in 1898 and his wife followed 6 months later, no one was surprised when the new minister, a young man fresh from seminary, sought out Amelia and Lucas to apologize for how the church had treated them years ago. They accepted his apology with grace, though both privately agreed that some wounds, while healed, left scars. As the century drew to a close, the West itself was changing. The frontier was closing, territories were becoming states, and the wild days of cattle drives and mining booms were fading into memory. But the lessons that Lucas and Amelia had learned and taught remained relevant. Honest work, respect for skill, the value of perseverance, and the importance of choosing love over prejudice. In the summer of 1900, they hosted a reunion of the trade school's first graduating class. Students who had gone on to successful careers across the West returned with their families, eager to reconnect and to show their own children where they had learned their trades. The ranch filled with people, with stories, with laughter and music, and the kind of joy that comes from seeing dreams fulfilled. Tom, now 20, announced his engagement to the daughter of a neighboring rancher, a smart, capable young woman named Catherine who loved horses as much as he did. Emma, at 18, had received offers to apprentice with master craftspeople in New York and Chicago, but had decided to stay at the ranch, at least for now, saying there was more she wanted to learn from her mother first. During the reunion, an older man approached Lucas and Amelia. He had been one of their first students, a 15-year-old orphan who had shown up with nothing but the clothes on his back and a desperate desire to learn a trade. "I wanted to thank you," he said, his eyes damp. "I was told my whole life I was worthless, that I would never amount to anything. But you saw something different. You taught me that my work had value, that I had value. I own my own saddle shop now in Denver. I have a wife and 3 children, and I owe all of it to what I learned here. Not just the craft, but the confidence to believe I deserved good things." Amelia embraced him, moved beyond words. After he walked away, she turned to Lucas. "This," she said, "this is what we built. Not just a ranch or a business, but something that matters." "We changed lives," Lucas agreed. "The same way mine was changed the day I met you." As the celebration continued around them, they slipped away to their favorite spot on the porch, watching the sun set over land they had shaped through years of hard work and unwavering commitment. "You remember what Mrs. Winters said that night at the hotel?" Amelia asked. "About my reputation, about warning you away from me." "I remember," Lucas said. "I wonder what she would think now, seeing all of this." "I think she died bitter and unchanged," Lucas said honestly. "Some people cannot see past their own prejudices. But the important thing is that she did not win. We did. We built something beautiful despite her and people like her. Because you believed honest work deserves honest love," Amelia said, repeating the words that had become something of a family motto. "And I was right," Lucas said, pulling her close. "Look at what that belief created. A family, a thriving business, a school that has changed hundreds of lives. All because we refused to accept that shame and prejudice were more powerful than skill and love." The years after the turn of the century brought more changes. Tom married Catherine in 1901, and they built a house on the northern section of the ranch, taking over the day-to-day operations of the cattle business. Emma, in a surprise to no one, fell in love with one of the blacksmithing instructors at the trade school, a quiet man named Peter who appreciated her fierce independence and creative genius. They married in 1902 and took over the leather and metalworking operations together, pushing both crafts in innovative directions. James, true to his childhood dreams, went to veterinary school, one of the youngest students ever accepted. He wrote long letters home about his studies, about the science behind animal health, about his plans to return and serve not just the ranch but all the ranchers in the area. Sarah, at 12, had decided she wanted to be a teacher and was already helping with the younger students at the trade school. Samuel, at 5, was still exploring everything with the boundless energy of a young child. Lucas, now in his mid-40s, had started to show some gray in his hair, but he was as strong and capable as ever, still breaking horses, still riding fence lines, still being the steady presence that held everything together. Amelia, at 44, had aged gracefully, her face bearing the lines of a life well lived, full of laughter and hard work and purpose. In 1905, James returned from veterinary school and immediately set up practice in a building they erected specifically for that purpose. He was the first veterinarian within 50 miles, and ranchers from across the region brought their animals to him. The ranch became not just a place of business and education, but a hub of the community. As the children grew into adults and started their own families, the ranch expanded further, becoming almost a small village unto itself. Tom and Catherine had 3 children. Emma and Peter had 2. The sound of grandchildren's laughter filled the ranch, and Lucas and Amelia found themselves in the role of beloved grandparents, watching the 3rd generation begin to make their marks. On their 20th wedding anniversary in 1898, Lucas had given Amelia a leather-bound journal and asked her to write down the story of the ranch, of the trade school, of how it all began. She had been working on it ever since, filling page after page with memories and lessons learned, wanting to preserve not just the facts but the spirit of what they had built. One entry, written in 1907, captured the essence of their journey. It has been nearly 30 years since Lucas first walked into my father's shop. I was a lonely, isolated young woman, convinced that my trade had condemned me to a life without love or respect. And then came this cowboy with his broken cinch and his radical idea that honest work deserves honest love. He saw value where others saw shame. He chose me when it would have been easier to choose someone socially acceptable. And in doing so, he did not just change my life. He changed our children's lives, our grandchildren's lives, the lives of hundreds of students who have passed through our school. We built something that matters, something that will last long after we are gone. And it all started because one person had the courage to reject prejudice and embrace truth. That is the legacy I want to leave. That honest work, done with pride and skill, deserves respect. That love is a choice we make every day, not just in grand gestures but in small moments of support and understanding. That building something worthwhile requires patience, persistence, and partnership. Lucas gave me all of that. And together, we gave it to our children and to anyone willing to learn. By 1910, the ranch covered over 5,000 acres. The trade school was in its 25th year, had educated over 2,000 students, and had waiting lists stretching years into the future. Tom was talking about running for the territorial legislature, wanting to bring their values of honest work and equal opportunity to a broader stage. Emma and Peter's innovative designs had won awards at expositions from San Francisco to St. Louis. James had become the most respected veterinarian in the territory, and Sarah had started her own school in Cimarron, teaching not just academics but practical life skills to children from all backgrounds. Lucas and Amelia, now in their 50s, had begun to step back from the day-to-day operations, trusting their children and the capable managers they had trained over the years. They spent more time with their grandchildren, passing on stories and skills, ensuring that the values they held dear would continue into the next generations. One evening, sitting in their accustomed spot on the porch, watching their grandchildren play in the yard while the sun set, Amelia reached over and took Lucas's hand. "We did it," she said softly. "Everything we dreamed of that first winter, everything we hoped to build, we did it." "We did," Lucas agreed. "Together." "I could not have done it without you," Amelia said. "Without your faith in me, your belief that my work mattered, your willingness to stand against the whole town if necessary." "I was the lucky one," Lucas said. "I got to spend my life with the most talented, determined, loving woman I have ever known. I got to watch you transform from someone the town shunned into someone they respect, even admire. I got to be your partner in building something that truly matters." "Honest work deserves honest love," Amelia said, the words that had guided their life together. "And honest love creates honest legacy," Lucas added. "Look at our children, our grandchildren, all the students we have taught. That is our legacy, Amelia, not the land or the buildings or the money. The people, the lives we have touched and changed." As the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, their grandchildren ran up to the porch, breathless and laughing, begging for stories about the old days, about when the ranch was just beginning, about how Grandpa and Grandma fell in love. Lucas and Amelia shared a look, a lifetime of understanding passing between them in a single glance, and then began to tell the story. About a lonely tanner's daughter who refused to be ashamed of her trade. About a cowboy who saw value where others saw only stigma. About the choice to believe that honest work deserves honest love, and the beautiful, complex, rewarding life that choice had created. The children listened, enraptured, as the story unfolded. And when it was done, when the youngest had been carried off to bed and the older ones had wandered away to their own pursuits, Lucas and Amelia remained, hand in hand, looking out over the land they had shaped and the life they had built. "No regrets?" Lucas asked softly. "Not a single one," Amelia replied. "Every struggle, every hardship, every moment of doubt led us here, and here is exactly where I want to be." They sat in comfortable silence as the night deepened. Two people who had taken a chance on love when the world said they should not, who had built something lasting from determination and faith and unwavering partnership. The ranch would continue long after they were gone, as would the school and the values they had instilled in their children. But in that moment, none of that mattered as much as the simple fact of being together, of having chosen each other and continuing to choose each other every single day. The smell of leather and tanned hide still clung faintly to Amelia's hands, even after all these years, even though she did not work the pits herself anymore. But now that smell was mixed with the scent of sage from the hills, bread from the kitchen, and the familiar warmth of Lucas beside her. It was the smell of home, of purpose, of a life fully lived. As they finally rose to go inside, Lucas pulled Amelia close for a kiss, as tender and true as the first one they had shared by the Cimarron River all those years ago. "I love you," he murmured. "My talented, stubborn, remarkable wife." "I love you," she replied. "My brave, steadfast, wonderful husband." They went inside together to the house filled with memories and love, to the ranch that had grown from a dream into a legacy, to the life they had built through honest work and honest love. And if anyone in Cimarron still remembered the tanner's daughter who had once been shunned for her trade, they remembered her now as Amelia Jensen, the woman who had proven that dignity and worth came not from social position but from character, skill, and the courage to be true to oneself. The story of the tanner's daughter and the cowboy who loved her would be told and retold through the generations, becoming part of the history of Cimarron, of New Mexico, of the West itself. It became a story about courage and conviction, about choosing love over prejudice, about the power of honest work and honest partnership. And every time it was told, it carried the same essential truth that Lucas had spoken that first evening in the hotel dining room, the truth that had guided their lives and shaped their legacy. Honest work deserves honest respect, honest recognition, and above all, honest love. Years would continue to pass, children would grow, grandchildren would have children of their own, and the ranch would evolve with the changing times. But the foundation that Lucas and Amelia built together, based on mutual respect, hard work, and unwavering love, would remain solid, a testament to what two people could create when they refused to let the world tell them what they were worth.